You don't have to be a professional artist to be able to create something beautiful and amazing on canvas. Let me break down today this stress-free painting for you and make painting with watercolors fun and approachable today. So go pull out your supplies and let's get started. Now, first off, we of course need some watercolor paper. Now, I do have a few simple, light pencil lines sketched in here for a bit of a guide, but this is absolutely an optional step. This painting is very doable as a free-handed piece, but really quickly, I will just go over with you what I do have drawn in here in case you'd like to follow along. I will use a thin Sharpie marker so that the lines are more visible in this demonstration, but I definitely recommend a pencil so you can erase or redraw as needed. So first off, I've got just a basic line at a slight angle for the stem of a flower. And then I'm also just going to make a few marks along this line where I feel like maybe some potential leaves along this stem might be able to go. Here at the top of the stem, I'll also make a couple of marks representing the base area for where the flower petals will be stemming out from. All of this is, of course, optional. Just add in whatever you feel like will be helpful to you. Here I also have added inside marks for where some of the petals may begin to start forming, as well as outside marks for how large or far out that I might want the petals to spread. The reason I've done this today is so that I can now plan out the placing of the second flower so that I don't put it too far or too close to this first one. So here goes the second flower stem now. This one will be a little taller than the first one. I'll again put in the same marks for the base of the flower as well as the inside and outside marks for the petals. Now you can see here that this first flower may potentially overlap a part of the stem here. So if you want to, you can erase a portion of that stem line if you don't want to have potential pencil lines showing through the petals later. All right, on to the third flower stem, which will be the shortest of the three, with again some of the same markings as before. Now, up in the corner here, I'm going to plan to have a piece of the stem showing that contains some flower buds. Because I know the general area of where the petals are going to be placed, I can draw this more up above them. This, of course, is just a quick guide. There's a good chance I'm going to deviate from this plan a little bit as I get into the painting, and that's okay. There's always the freedom to change things up as you get going if you feel like there's a better way to do this. After I get this fully painted, I will trace my painting for a more detailed outline that I can then put on my Etsy shop in case any of you would prefer to have a more detailed guide or would rather just skip to the fun of the painting. I'll leave a link for that as well as links and information about all of the supplies you'll see me using today listed in the description of this video if you're interested. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull out my paints and water, and then next up are the brushes. I'll be using a number 10 round and a number 6 round today. As you're probably aware by now, these are a couple of my personally designed Craftamo brushes that will soon be available for a limited time purchase. We are looking at October being the month that they will be potentially released, and in just a few weeks, I will be doing a special unboxing video so you can get a close-up and detailed look as well as more information about this set. So keep an eye out for that. I will have listed in the description of this video a link to be notified when these are available. These will be sold on a first come, first serve basis. All right, I'm going to go ahead and tape my paper down and then we'll be ready to get started. Let's go ahead and pull out a few colors on our tray, starting with some Alizarin Crimson. Now, of course, you can use whatever colors you have on hand or would like to use though. Then I'll take some of that same Alizarin Crimson and darken it up just a little bit for a shadow color by adding in a touch of Dioxazine Purple and maybe even a very small amount of Ivory Black. Then, using this large number 10 round brush, I'll take a bit of this alizarin crimson and begin painting in the petals of these flowers, using my pencil marks as a guide with a few broad strokes of the brush. Basically, all I'm doing here is holding the tip of my brush at the center of the flower. Then, as I begin to pull the brush outward, at the same time, I'm going to push down on the bristles to make it a nice broad stroke. I'll do that same thing over again a few times until I've formed the petal shape that I like. Then, as another optional addition, while this paint is still wet, you can add in a touch more alizarin crimson to the very base of the petal to make it even darker in value. In fact, in just a few minutes, I'm actually also going to add in some of this darkened alizarin crimson as well. But if you find it easier to add that dark color in right now, instead of waiting and before the paint begins to dry, then that is totally fine as well. Now that I've added several of these nice large petals to create a side-facing flower, I'll go ahead and add in that darkened alizarin crimson mixture for a bit of shadow and dimension. Now, because I worked fairly quickly with my original painting, this is still wet enough for this color to blend and bleed into. But if you're finding that it's not blending very well because it's started to dry, you may want to add this color a little bit earlier, as I mentioned before. Part of the problem with trying to add this extra color in when parts of the petal have already started to dry is that sometimes it can create blooms of color or hard lines on your page where you don't want them to be. Something that you can try if you do start to develop a bloom is rinse and dry your brush off and then kind of wipe or push that color back a little bit. You might have to wipe your brush again on your paper towel and do that a few times to kind of fix this. But be cautious and pick your moments with fixing these too, because sometimes trying to fix them actually makes the situation worse. So just be careful. I'll continue on painting each of these flowers and the petals in a similar way until I feel like they look nice and full. I think most of these I'll paint in about maybe 7 or 8 petals for each flower. I try to create tutorials using a variety of different skill levels so that you can pick and choose what you feel comfortable trying, but more importantly, help you succeed doing it. Painting can be for anyone, and it's never too late to learn or give it a try. If this sounds like something you're looking for, I hope you'll consider subscribing if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming tutorials. All right, well done. This is a great start, and hopefully it hasn't been too hard so far. So let's switch over to the smaller number 6 brush now and finish off using some of this pink color by painting in these little buds in the upper right-hand corner. I'll sort of paint these in a similar way as the petals by painting a base coat of the alizarin crimson first. Then while that is still wet, I'll add in a touch of the darkened alizarin crimson. You know what? I may even just go ahead and use this dark color to paint the little branches and stems here as well. And actually, why not change things up a bit and paint in a few of these buds a solid dark color too? While I'm at it, I'll go ahead and paint this flower stem using that same color. For the next two stems, I'd kind of like to do a transition of color, moving from the dark purple down to some green at the bottom. So let's pull out a few more color options on our tray here. Let's grab some hooker's green first, and then I'll throw a bit of ultramarine blue on here as well. This way I can also have the option of mixing these two colors later for a nice blue-green. I'll do something similar down here with the sap green and add in maybe a touch of gamboge for some yellow-green as well. Okay, let's give a color changing stem a try. I'll start out with the dark purple, then maybe about halfway down I'll switch over to some of the hooker's green. That went pretty well, so let's paint the next stem in a similar way, but this time I'm going to add a touch of that blue that I mentioned earlier for some blue-green nearer to the bottom. At this point, all that's left to do is add in a few leaves here and there, and I'd really like to use a combination and a good variety of blue, green, and yellow color mixes as I go. As far as these leaf shapes go, there's really nothing too special here. These are just normal leaf shapes with thinner points at the two ends and a broader, thicker middle. I think I'll start with some of this yellow-green first, and kind of like we did with the petals, I'll probably add some hints of other colors in here while this base paint is still a little wet to add some character and dimension. I'll probably add some hooker's green as the accent on these ones. Okay, moving on to a shade darker, I'll paint these next few leaves with some hooker's green first, and then maybe some accents of blue-green. Now let's try some blue-green leaves, and for an accent color here, I'll probably just use a more concentrated or darker blue-green. Just for some fun, I may even add some tiny little stems or buds at the top here using some dark purple. This, of course, is optional. I kind of am just playing around and filling in some empty spaces at this point until I've got the look I want. And here we have it. I think we can call this painting done. Now, this wasn't too hard of a piece to do, was it? Just simple, easy, relaxing, and enjoyable. I hope you had some fun today and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.